This is episode 57, and in today's episode, we're going to dive into the topic of unlocking your husband's inner leadership. Just a reminder that the Happier Marriage podcast is a premier podcast that integrates biblical and scientific strategies to equip Christian wives with the skills and tools they need to transform their marriages. It is our belief at Happier Marriage Secrets that as a Christian wife, you hold immense power and influence in nurturing a loving and harmonious relationship with your husband. Even though there are others who would suggest other ways to unlock your husband's leadership, I'll be sharing with you 3 of the most important ones. So stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to the Happier Marriage Podcast, a podcast for spouses longing to have a happier marriage so they can feel more connected, desired, and supported. Now, to start the show, here is your host and Sherpa, licensed marriage and family therapist and certified relationship coach, Kingsley Grant.
Now, before we dive into the topic of unlocking your husband's inner leadership, I want to ask you 3 questions. First question is this: how do you currently view your husband's leadership role in your marriage? Question number 2, what do you think might be holding you back from fully supporting his leadership? And question number 3 is, can you envision the positive impact of embracing and empowering his leadership qualities? Now, these questions and more will be answered throughout this episode. Now, if you have ever struggled with this idea of leadership and what it should look like in your home, this episode is going to answer many of your questions. Many people or many couples have different ideas of what this should look like. But what I find is there is this underlining idea that leadership is necessary. We know that it's important. We know that in the home, someone has to lead, and there's never at any one time you have 2 persons leading. You look across the spectrum of any kind of institution, you find the buck simply stops with 1 person at any one time. And it's acceptable, right, for a corporation or a sports team or you name it, to have a leadership, a head coach, right, a CEO, a president. Why is it so? Because every organization that is healthy requires a headship, a leadership. So regardless of what people may want to think, and I find because of virtue signaling and trying to be all things to all people, we're shifted away from this idea of making it something like as if in the family, in the husband and wife relationship, both can lead. Now, both have leadership skills, and I get it. And both are able to obviously lead in different areas. However, at the end of the day, both cannot be leaders at the same time. One person has to step out at certain times to take the lead in decision-making and so on. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we're going to talk more about that and unpack those things in this episode. Now, before we begin, you might be wondering if your husband even wants to be a leader or if he's ready to take on that responsibility. Now, here's what I find in working with so many couples and have spoken to so many wives, that some will say, I've tried encouraging him in the past, and I've faced some kind of resistance from him. Well, I want you to rest assured that we're going to cover some of those concerns and show you how to approach this journey with grace and wisdom. Now, here's what I find in listening to a number of wives and having researched and taught in different sects, in different contexts, with people who have this kind of concerns or with wives. And this question comes up. As a matter of fact, if you follow me on Facebook, I'm having this interesting kind of in conversation going on, because I'm making this post about dear wife, and of course it's all kind of interaction and feedback, and some people are triggered because there are some things that have been said that people don't like to hear anymore in our society. Everything has been softened. Everything has become, just so making it so palatable for everyone. It's like, it's a blase taste, right? We need to kind of, I believe, step away from that, and you may see and hear more of that from me. But the question I've seen also been asked in one of my Facebook posts is, what if my husband doesn't show interest in taking the lead? What if he doesn't? Well, it's normal to have concerns about your husband's willingness to step up. But remember, your goal is to nurture and encourage his leadership, not force it. And we'll explore some strategies to gently inspire and support him in this episode, and you'll hear that later on. The second thing I hear is, I'm afraid of losing control if I empower my husband's leadership. Now, I get where that's coming from, but I want you to be rest assured that empowering your husband doesn't mean giving up your own voice or authority. It's about fostering or creating a partnership where both of you can thrive. And we'll discuss that healthy balance and collaboration in this episode. And the third thing I hear sometimes is, what if my husband makes mistakes or takes the wrong path? Now, as you know, leadership involves risk, taking risks, and mistakes are part of the growth process. It's a mistake means you can do another take, and just how we learn. And we'll talk about embracing imperfections and learning from the challenges or the mistakes we make in our lives. And that's part of growth. He who does not make mistakes is he who have not tried something new. And let's say he, I'm talking about he or she in this instance. Now, it's natural to have concerns about empowering your husband's leadership. And we're going to explore some practical ways to support and encourage him without pressure or control. And I want us to kind of dive in a few moments in how to unlock your husband's potential as a leader. But one thing I do know, it requires understanding the importance of his role in various aspects of life. This is where I think sometimes where the falling out takes place or where things go awry, because as a wife, you might not understand the importance of his role. And that, I believe, is God-breathed. I believe it's God-designed in the man, and I believe this is an ordained thing by God. And, we see it in the Bible, and we know that today in our world, of course, there's a pushback, and we don't want to adhere to the biblical standards or mandates because there is almost this idea of trying to dispute and debunk that the Bible is God-breathed or is God who used men and spoke directly through them. We're now hearing it's man-made, and it's all maybe a man who was very misogynistic, and he's just a hater. People have said all those things about Paul, the author of so many of the New Testament books, that Paul had an issue with women, and Paul was only a messenger. God spoke through Paul to write the Bible in the way he did. So the issue is not with Paul, the issue is with God. And the same thing here, when I'm sharing some things, whether on my post or here, the issue is not with me, because it rubs against the culture. It rubs against what's happened in our society and the breaking down of marriages and the emasculation of men and the softening of this gender called men. We just don't like the fact that men are masculine anymore. We want to make it, there is an attempt to make men be ashamed of being masculine and being this person that God intended for them to be. So I want you to understand that your husband and the importance of his role in the marriage, in the relationship, in the family. Now, from being a husband and father to fulfilling his spiritual calling, your support can make a significant impact. Now, here are some things I believe that when you're able to help your husband in this leadership role, empowering him as a leader, I believe that it not only strengthens your bond, but I believe it also creates a very joyful and fulfilling marriage. I've yet to meet the husband who would argue with this point of wanting to be recognized as a leader in his home. I've yet to meet him. I'm not saying he's not out there, because some men shy away from leadership, and for a number of reasons. Some men do so because they feel like, I don't want to fight. I don't want to compete. So they will at times step away from that. But I believe that there's some benefits when you, as this wife, I believe that you're an extraordinary wife when you can recognize the need for your husband to become the leader in your home. Because it's for your own benefit. It's for the overall benefit of the family. And some may argue that point, but you know what? I understand that. However, I've seen it. And you look at our marriages and our families today, is it any wonder it is what it is? Because I find that we've shifted so far away from the manual that tells us about how marriages should run, and everybody have done what is in their own eyes what they think it should be. And so is it any wonder we're so, as a nation, as a world, when it comes to the family and marriages, we're so messed up? Is it any wonder? Thank God there's some pockets that are doing their best to preserve what marriages should look like. But here's some benefits. I want to share 3 benefits with you when you're able to do this as an extraordinary wife, because that's who you are. You're listening to this podcast because you are an extraordinary and want to be the extraordinary wife. You're not just one of those wives who are out there just trying to, kind of hold things together and just follow whatever comes down the pike. No, you want to be the wife that truly experiences a happier marriage, and you have a very important role to play. So one of the benefits is this, that you can have a deeper emotional connection and understanding that takes place between you and your husband when he is given a chance to lead. Because there's something about that for him that makes him feel like he wants to do whatever he needs to do to somehow make sure that you are proud of him as a leader in the house. Second benefit, it enhances trust and respect that forms a strong foundation for your relationship. And the third benefit is a shared vision and purpose that will truly unite both of you in pursuing your dreams and ambitions. That is really what I believe this whole episode is all about. Now, I want to share with you a quick story of our couple, Sarah and John. Now, Sarah is one of those extraordinary wives, and she realized that John, her husband, had incredible potential as a leader, but what he lacked was confidence in taking the lead. So Sarah, being this extraordinary wife like you who are listening right now, or maybe if you're listening as your husband, your wife is that extraordinary wife, or you may be wanting to see how you can take this episode and have her listen to this on the sly without making it seem as if you're trying to force something on her. But what I'm talking about is this. You may be listening to this as a husband as well. But what Sarah did, she observed how this lack of confidence affected their relationship, or where John wasn't the lead in the way that she think he should lead. It affected their relationship and their family dynamics. But Sarah, understood the importance of empowering John's inner leader, and so she set out on a journey to support him. She recognized that she has a very pivotal role, and she could be a very instrumental part of this of John becoming the leader he ought to become. And so what she discovered is that by affirming John's strengths and providing opportunities for him to lead, she could inspire his confidence. And so what she did when they began to explore shared goals and dreams, what she did was she allowed John to step into his leadership role with a new assurance, and he was given opportunities to make decisions, the final decisions. After they mutually had a conversation, she stepped back and allowed him to make those final decisions about the family. This really led to John's newfound confidence, and John stepped up, and it made the family a more united and stronger and thriving marriage and relationship and the family, right? Now, why did that happen? Why did that happen? That and more is coming up your way real shortly, and I'm going to ask that you just hang in there, but I'm going to bring that to you, why it happened with Sarah and John, right after this.
So, the big question is this. How is it possible that you have a happier marriage when you feel like you've tried everything? Your spouse isn't making an effort. You're exhausted. You feel like giving up. Or there's so much hurt that's taken place between you and your spouse. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers.
Now, before I share with you 3 practical ways that you can unlock your husband's inner leadership, let me ask you to give me about 90 seconds to share some very important information with you, okay? The first thing is about ratings and review. If you can, and I would hope you would be able to, on the platform that you're listening to this podcast, there is a rating and review opportunity there. I would love for you to just leave a paragraph and click on a 5-star or however amount of stars you want to. And I would really appreciate that, because it's one way for this episode to be found, and how the algorithm will use to show this before more people. And I really appreciate that from you as well. Now, if you missed any of the past episodes, I've covered a number of topics. You can also go back and listen at your own convenience at happiermarriagesecrets.com, happiermarriagesecrets.com/podcast, and you can just embark upon a day where you just listen and listen and listen, okay? Secondly, if you would like to take the temperature of your marriage, maybe you're trying to figure out where your marriage is right now and gauge the state of your marriage, I want to strongly suggest that you take the Happier Marriage Assessment Quiz. Take that quiz at happiermarriagesecrets.com/quiz, happiermarriagesecrets.com/quiz, and you can take a quiz that can give you a feedback as to the state of your marriage, and you can get a PDF that explains what the results are from that very 90-second quiz, and you got it. And lastly, I want to mention that this show is brought to you by kingsofgrant.com, where you'll find resources and other services that might be of interest to you. And I want you to make sure you avail yourself to that at kingsofgrant.com. All these links that I mentioned will be in the show notes that follows this episode. And again, thank you for giving me that brief 90 seconds. Thank you so much. Now, how can you empower your husband's leadership and create a deeper connection with him? So let's explore then 3 actionable, practical steps or things that you can do that are insights from both my experience, but also from the Bible, that will guide you along this transformative path. The first thing I want to suggest is communicate openly and express your belief in your husband's capabilities. You want to encourage him to take the lead in decision-making and problem-solving. You say, Kingsley, well, what about, like you mentioned earlier, that he may not, you may feel he's not competent. You may feel like he's not ready. You may feel like he doesn't want to do it. Well, you want to just ask why. Figure out why might he not want to lead? Is it a belief? Is it a self-confidence issue? Is it self-worth issue? There may be something that he could be coached in to overcome that barrier that really would allow him to feel as if he's doing what he wants to do as a man, as a husband, and it's that to protect and provide and to lead his family. He may want to feel that. So you want to encourage him like Sarah did with John. She encouraged him. She found some strengths of his, and she began to latch on that, and she cheerled him in those areas. And then she allowed him to take baby steps, right? So you want to communicate openly and let your husband know that you believe in him and his capabilities. Look for the small things he's doing, and you want to kind of reinforce that. You want to echo that. You want him to hear that you notice, and make it about leadership, that he led. He took the step forward. He initiated. He made a decision about the family, what's in best for the family. Okay? So you want to communicate openly and express your belief in his capabilities. Okay? That's very important. Second thing, seek guidance from the Bible. The Bible is the only manual on marriage. You know, regardless of what anybody is saying, and I'm sure in our day we're living today, people want to disregard that. They'll say it's old-fashioned, it's archaic, and you hear those things being said about the Bible. It's nothing new, but the Bible holds very, very, I believe, the only accurate way and description of what marriage should look like. It's amazing to see even people today in the church who is deviating from that. They've allowed the world and the culture to dictate what it should look like. And it's not about your feelings and about this and that. But my friend, listen, the God who instituted marriage should know what it takes for marriages to be successful and to be excellent. He should know, because he created marriages, right? Marriage was not just by some man or woman who decided, let's do this thing called marriage. God himself is a founder of marriage. And so he wrote the book on marriage. He wrote the manual for marriage. And so he decided and defined the role of the husband's leadership, and God designed him for that. And so I know there's a pushback because some men have abused that relationship, that position, and I get it. Some people have been dictators, right? Some men have really, truly are not deserving of the wife they have or to lead a family. They've abdicated their roles. They've destroyed all, and I get it. In every segment of society, you have those who are, we would say, good seed, bad seed. But we don't give up because we have bad seeds. That there are those who are doing it right because they're following the biblical mandate that God has described about what leadership, what a man's role should look like, is first God, then the husband, then the wife. That is the hierarchical standard. It remains true. That's not man's design, that's God's design. And so when you see God's design and see why he says this is what's best for you as an extraordinary wife, a helpmeet for your husband, my friend, if you can only get this idea, is for your own best interest, is for you to have a happier marriage. Now, does it mean that all marriages who follow the manual works? No. I mean, of course not, right? Some have not. But it doesn't mean it's still not true. It still is true, regardless of how your experience might be. Don't let your experience become the deciding factor of how this should work. And thirdly, not only, number one, is communicate openly and express your belief in your husband, his capability. Not only seeking guidance from the Bible about your husband's leadership role and God's design for his role in the marriage, but thirdly, you want to foster or create an atmosphere of support and trust. You want to celebrate his successes, even small ones, and then provide a safe space for him to learn and grow. You can be an incredible influencer in this whole thing and not be afraid of it. The more your husband can step into this role, the better it is, because he is going to treat you, and my prayer is that he would, the way that God intended for him to treat you. Because when you elevate him, when you put him in that position, he will want to reciprocate everything that leadership does. He would also sometimes will say, you know what, I think you do a better job over here than I do. Why don't you do that? He'd be more than willing to make this thing work. So I believe that when you foster an atmosphere, so if the tone of the family, even symbolic, that he is recognized as a leader, and you're celebrating his successes, and provide a safe space for him to learn and grow, and not criticize his attempts at something that he may not, may fail at, not criticize it, not I told you so and all that stuff. It doesn't help. You want to create a safe space where he feels that you're there to support him and be, as God says, the helpmate that he needs. That's why God puts you in his life. It's to bring out the best in him. Because when you're able to do that and he's under God's authority, watch out. The world cannot hold you back. The world is going to look on in amazement at what God does. So these three practical ideas: communicate openly and express your belief in your husband's capabilities, seek guidance from the Bible, and then foster or create an atmosphere of support and trust, I believe will help in your marriage. So in summary, as we kind of wind down here, unlocking your husband's potential as a leader, and this is very important. It's not about exerting control, and it's not about diminishing your own worth, right? Both things can be true at the same time. You're not exerting control, but you're not diminishing your worth. It's about recognizing the power that lies in this setup that God has designed. So by embracing his leadership, you're creating a foundation for a flourishing, joy-filled, happier marriage. So embrace this journey, you extraordinary wife. Embrace this journey with love and enthusiasm and watch your marriage flourish like never before. Remember, by embracing this role as an extraordinary wife, you're contributing to the transformation of marriages, not just yours, but marriages around the world. I believe that this is what you want, and that's why you've listened so far, and that's why you're here. I believe that with all of my heart. Okay? Now, I want to encourage you to, again, as I mentioned before, having listened, I want you to please leave a rating and review. Make sure you get the quiz, and all the links will be in the show notes, right? And I want you to share this episode. Share this episode with one other person. So thanks again for listening. The announcer will now tell you how to get a free gift just for staying to the end. Now let's make marriages happier again. And God bless.
We've come to the end of another exciting show, and if you enjoyed this podcast, 1. Make sure you give this show a rating and review. 2. Subscribe to the show to get all new releases. And 3. Get your complimentary copy of the 5 Secrets to a Happier Marriage ebook at kingsleygrant.com/HMS ebook. Again, it's kingsleygrant.com/HMS ebook. See the link in the show notes. Do it today. Don't delay. Thanks so much for listening, and make sure you tell one other spouse about this show, or better yet, share it with them. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May he turn his face toward you and give you his peace, both now and forever.